This is Caring for Kids on News Talk 760 WJR. Presented by the Children's Foundation. And here's your host, President and CEO of the Children's Foundation, Larry Burns.
Thanks, Mark, and hello, everyone, and welcome to our May 2021 edition of Caring for Kids. On tonight's show, we have a great lineup. We will be talking with three leaders about their involvement in addressing some of Detroit's most challenging poverty-related issues. Joining us tonight will be John Simon, the board chair and co-founder of the GreenLight Fund, Rishi Moudgil, executive director of GreenLight Fund Detroit, and Tiffany Douglas, market executive for Michigan at Bank of America. It's all coming up next on Caring for Kids, here on the great voice of the Great Lakes, News Talk 760 WJR.
It's Caring for Kids with Larry Burns.
Welcome back, everyone. Joining me now is John Simon. John is the board chair and co-founder of GreenLight Fund. John is also a managing director at Sigma Prime Ventures, where he focuses on software-based businesses and disruptive technology businesses. Before co-founding General Catalyst Partners, John was founder, chairman, and CEO of Euromed Corporation. John is a member of the World Presidents Organization. He is also a co-founder and current trustee of the Stepping Stone Foundation, a nonprofit organization that provides educational opportunities to deserving inner-city students. John is a graduate of Harvard University, earning a bachelor's in history and science, and Oxford University, where he is a Rhodes Scholar and received his master's in politics, philosophy, and economics. So, John, welcome to Caring for Kids. Tell our listeners about the development and the concept and creation of GreenLight Fund, and also can you explain the idea of social investments?
Larry, thanks so much, first of all, for having me. It's an honor to be on the show with all the good that the show does and that you do. GreenLight was an idea we came up with about 16 years ago when we realized that for all the issues communities want addressed and want to move the needle on, but where things aren't happening locally in a city, we might be able to identify solutions that existed in other cities and had come to scale and totally turned outcomes in a positive direction at scale in a bunch of different cities, but weren't in our city, and where we could basically build this community Swiss Army knife that we call GreenLight, which would sit in a city and in a community-driven way, just address one issue at a time with something that wasn't happening in the city by bringing something that was a solution that could scale in the city and address needs. And we've now been operating for about 16 years, and we're reaching about 500,000 children and families annually across our cities. We're in now 10 cities, soon to be 12 cities. Detroit was the 5th city that we launched. And we've moved the needle on a whole host of issues year by year in all of our communities. So that's the basic idea behind the GreenLight Fund. Now, when it comes to social impact investing, there are different kinds of investing. There's investing in companies that are doing good, but where it's for-profit investing and you're trying to make gain. Or there is social impact investing in the terms of donating to nonprofits that are doing good and where the return is all a social return. GreenLight itself is a nonprofit, and so everybody that gives money to us, they're donating to us, and we're delivering a social return for the community. But social impact investing broadly across both categories is growing exponentially now. And that's because we have a huge sense of community in America now, and that we can do much, much better on a whole host of issues. And we have to be real intentional about it. And we have to put more passion and resources into having a better country and building a better life for so many.
We're talking with John Simon, board chair and co-founder of the GreenLight Fund. And the Children's Foundation has been involved in GreenLight Fund Detroit for several years now. As you continue to grow throughout the country, can you tell us a little bit about that growth? Maybe list a couple of the cities you're about to get into. And then we're going to talk a little bit about the Detroit experience after that. But let's give our listeners a little bit more information on some of the cities you're about to go into or have recently impacted.
So 16 years ago, this was just an idea, and we created it in Boston. And over a period of 8 years, we focused on really proving it in Boston. And at this point, 16 years down the road, we've now moved the needle on 12 issues, 12 outcomes that are really important to the community and really important to low-income children and families. We've changed 12 metrics at scale, impacting close to 300,000 children and families a year in Boston. So after 8 years of really proving this in Boston, we started to add cities. And I'll just tick them off real quickly. We added Philadelphia as our second city, San Francisco Bay Area as our third city, Cincinnati is our fourth city, Detroit is our fifth, Charlotte is our sixth, Kansas City is our seventh, Atlanta is our eighth, Minneapolis, St. Paul, the Twin Cities as our ninth, and then Baltimore, which is the most recent city we announced, as our 10th city. We announced it in January of this year. And we are all teed up to launch Newark as our 11th city and Chicago as our 12th city sometime next year. And then we have a queue of 10 to 15 cities where in all of them, a whole bunch of people have indicated interest in having a green light in their city, whether it's mayors or foundations or companies or citizens or community organizers. And so we're kind of working through this demand by adding essentially one city a year. I haven't decided yet what's going to be our 13th city, lucky 13, but we will eventually be taking it up to adding 2 cities a year. And the goal is to get to 25 to 30 cities across America over the next 7 to 10 years. And the reason is because we've sort of proven this as a community utility that operates in a community in harmony with the United Way, the Community Foundation, the food bank, the school system, city government, state government. I mean, all these community institutions. This is just another community institution that's additive, that fits in a community. The difference being that we're running a locally driven, community-driven process that's all, owned and operated by Detroiters to do what Detroit needs this year, or what Detroit needs next year, or what Detroit needs the following year, and just to fill one gap a year, all community-driven, all driven by Detroiters.
And we're talking with John Simon, board chair and co-founder of GreenLight Fund. And later on in this show, as you know, we're going to talk to Rishi Moudgil, who leads the Detroit GreenLight Fund, and then Tiffany Douglas, one of your original investors in Detroit. And so, John, as the founder of GreenLight Fund, what have you discovered about Detroit that makes Detroit maybe different than some of the other cities you listed, and any surprises about Detroit? And I think our listeners would be very interested in hearing about your thoughts about Detroit specifically.
Well, I knew Detroit a little bit from a business perspective before we launched GreenLight Detroit. I had some contacts and relationships in the city, but I can't say I really knew the city. And when we launched GreenLight Detroit about somewhere between 4 and 5 years ago, I made about a half a dozen visits to Detroit over a year-long period. And I literally met hundreds of folks in Detroit, all different demographics, all different professions, all different kinds of people, from political leaders to community leaders to business leaders. And I have to say, I'm a little bit biased when I answer this question. I totally fell in love with Detroit. I bought my Shinola watch. I kind of got all my Tigers gear. And, I just totally fell in love with Detroit when we were building GreenLight Detroit. And that love affair kind of continues to this day. So some things that are special about Detroit, which I don't really need to tell your audience, but just to highlight it because I see a perspective across other cities. There's a tremendous civic spirit and passion around Detroit. And as you know, the city grew quite large, like 1.6 million residents, and it kind of shrunk to maybe 600,000. And now it's on the move, it's growing, it's building. And there's a tremendous civic spirit, the comeback city. I mean, we can really do amazing things in Detroit. And not just for the top strata of, economics or, real estate or whatever, but we can build together a better life for everybody in Detroit. So that's the first thing I would call out, a real civic spirit. Detroiters for Detroiters, let's come together, let's do better. And that's in the business community and throughout. So that's one thing that I think is special about Detroit. A second thing that's special is that you have a tremendous number of amazing Black leaders peppered throughout industry, throughout the nonprofit world. And I think Detroit can be a real leader in how we build, a more diverse, inclusive, and better community all through. I know when I went to sporting events in Detroit or when I went to the auto show, just to see how diverse the crowd is compared to other cities, I think that that's a really powerful thing about Detroit. And, race is a really live topic in all conversations. And I think that's a positive thing. I think it kind of, while sometimes people splinter apart, I think it can really build community. And I think it's a really, really notable thing about Detroit. I would say a third thing that I would just call out is that you have the auto industry and then a whole bunch of ecosystem around it. But the economy as a whole is sort of building other sectors. There's an emerging tech sector. There's an emerging entrepreneurial sector. There's an emerging private equity sector. And so I think, and it's going to take time, but I think Detroit is building, a diverse economic and educational ecosystem that will really help everybody in the long term. Those are the things I would call out about Detroit. I guess one other thing, there's some amazing nonprofits doing incredible work. And GreenLight, as an ecosystem partner, partners with all those folks. We've really loved partnering with the city, Mayor Duggan and other people in his office and administration. They've been fantastic partners for GreenLight. So is Superintendent Vitti in the school system. So I'll just call out some of these major institutions in the city that we've enjoyed partnering with and we've found to be very functional partners.
Well, that makes me very proud to be a Detroiter with all the great things you're saying. And so I'm also a big believer, John, in integrating philanthropy, and you kind of mentioned this earlier, but integrating philanthropy with social responsible capitalism. And do you see this trend evolving through the country? And I know there's some folks in Detroit that are shepherding this, and I just didn't know your thoughts as a venture capitalist and a very successful business person. Is this a trend that you're seeing in other places?
Yeah, I think it's a trend across the country. There's this corporate group whose name is sort of slipping my mind, but this national U.S. corporate group that came out with a statement saying that, businesses need to look after customers, employees, shareholders, but also the communities in which they live and work, and the country in which they live and work, and also think about being global citizens. And so that's a stakeholder around the business as well that should be paid attention to. And that group did not have a statement like that 3 to 10 years ago. So I definitely think we're seeing a little bit more of a mission orientation in business around, again, got to take care of the bottom line, got to build a great business, got to take care of customers, got to take care of employees. But what about being a good corporate citizen? And that's a dimension that we should be investing in, thinking about, and building throughout our culture. And we do see that across the country, and we definitely see that in Detroit. Just to call out some of the companies that, GreenLight has worked hand in glove with: Bill Ford, Ford Motor Company, Kevin Clark, Aptiv, Lear Corporation. These have been founding donors to GreenLight Fund, and that donor group is expanding in our second fund. So what we're seeing with those folks is a real sense for, we do have a responsibility to the community, and we do have a responsibility to the globe. And we are going to be paying attention to that in how we invest and how we hire and how we do what we do. And I think it's a really positive trend because it kind of pulls everybody together. And one of the things businesses have seen is that customers and investors kind of notice this. And customers and investors sort of gravitate to companies that are doing good, as long as it's not at the expense of doing well business-wise. And in fact, usually it's a multiplier effect. It's not a detraction, it's an addition.
Absolutely, in addition. So thank you, John Simon, for being who you are and creating this wonderful thing across our country, and in particularly in Detroit, GreenLight Fund. And we appreciate you being on Caring for Kids as well.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Yep, thank you. That was John Simon, board chair and co-founder, GreenLight Fund. And coming up next, we're going to hear from Rishi Moudgil about GreenLight Fund right here in Detroit. When Caring for Kids continues, here on the great voice of the Great Lakes, News Talk 760 WJR.
Welcome back to Caring for Kids on WJR, presented by the Children's Foundation.
Welcome back, everybody. With me now is Rishi Moudgil. Rishi is the executive director of GreenLight Fund Detroit, a position he's held since 2017. Previously, Rishi was the founder and managing director of the University of Michigan Center for Social Impact and led U of M's nonprofit and public management center among the schools of public policy, business, and social work. Early in his career, Rishi founded K-Grams, Inc., a national mentoring and literacy program that served thousands of college and elementary students annually. He then led a pioneering effort nationally to launch and support businesses across the state of Michigan called the Great Lakes Entrepreneurs Quest. Rishi has been named an American Express Next Gen Fellow with Independent Sector, Blue Cross Blue Shield of Michigan Grand Angel, and U of M Outstanding Legacy Award recipient. Rishi earned his bachelor's degree, master's in education, and MBA, all from the great University of Michigan. Rishi, welcome to Caring for Kids. So Rishi, let's start out by explaining the concept of the GreenLight Fund brand and some of the confusion it's caused in our great city of Detroit. So let's mention that first.
Sure. As you know, GreenLight Fund is a model for the people of Detroit to control their own destiny. It brings together folks from neighborhoods, businesses, organizations to elevate critical priorities and opportunities that we see to combat poverty. And it's a participatory process where we're shifting power back to residents and stakeholders in the city for improved economic mobility. But we launched 5 years ago, right when other programs, also called GreenLight, started. So those include Project GreenLight with the city, GreenLight Business Plan competition at the state level. So we just want to be clear that GreenLight Fund is completely separate from these other activities and will be here for a long time. We're a coalition of Detroiters focusing on pressing challenges today with a focus on investing in these long-term sustainable steps to improve living conditions and mobility for folks that seek it out locally.
Well said. And I can relate to brand confusion. As you know, we changed our name a couple years ago. It was the Children's Hospital of Michigan Foundation. Everywhere I went, people thought I worked for the hospital. And so we changed it with great leadership from Jill Nelson and the board to the Children's Foundation. And it's made it a lot more clear. And you've done a great job defining the brand of GreenLight Fund Detroit. But I thought we'd at least mention that for our listeners. So thank you for doing that. Let's talk about some of the social investments GreenLight Fund Detroit has made over the last few years. I'm fortunate enough to be involved in those decisions, and they're great conversations. And so if you don't mind explaining some of that to our listeners.
Of course. In 3-4 years now, we've distributed close to $2 million in unrestricted grants to organizations that have also leveraged another about $8 million or so in revenue to support and grow these new programs in our community. And we hire locally to staff and run our programming, and we continue to, build the muscle and progress here in the social sector of Detroit. And each new program that we bring, I wanted to mention, complements existing landscape to fit with efforts already on the ground. What GreenLight Fund is trying to do with our new social investments is integrate into the landscape and boost existing efforts even further in the city. So I will give you those couple of examples that Larry and so many others and your listeners have helped us determine and bring here. The first organization was the Center for Employment Opportunities 2 or 3 years ago, or CEO for short. And CEO provides immediate and comprehensive employment services for residents returning home from incarceration. And so CEO has a multi-step model where they first operate multiple daily work crews across the region. This is with supervisors, job feedback, daily pay, and much more to ensure that folks are supported in their first work out of the system. Then what CEO does is they ensure folks have and find long-term employment in the pathways of their choice. They stay with folks for up to a year, providing support and incentives. And so this is a really powerful program, evidence-based, that significantly reduces recidivism rates for folks to return back to prison and supports them in longer-term employment. An example of that they're working on right now is the beautification of the Fitzgerald neighborhood in partnership with the city and the DESC. And so CEO is this great, employer for those who have barriers to employment. And they're also working on systems level changes and policy changes that are going to help Detroiters. So just as an example, over the last year during the pandemic, they brought in $1 to $2 million nationally to distribute a direct stimulus to over 700 Detroiters so that when they were exiting the system in the pandemic, they could still have a foot up in getting back into our community. And they led a coalition overturn a state ban that unfortunately had that restricted food assistance access for individuals with multiple felony convictions. And we were able to remove that, and now it's just easier to move in society because of some of this work that CEO has done.
That's great. And we're talking with Rishi Moudgil from GreenLight Fund Detroit. if someone were to ask, well, how does that fit into the Children's Foundation? Well, we're now all about helping families because the best way to have a healthy child, both physically and mentally, is a healthy family. And so what CEO does in many ways is bring those families back together and give them a real chance to be a unit. So I think it fits perfectly in what we're trying to do. I just thought I'd add that.
No question. And we appreciate that. And that's part of what we need to do is start looking at our children and our families as whole families, whole units working together collectively as we do in our families to ensure, prosperity for the ones we love. This is one program. Our next couple of programs, actually, that we've done in the last couple of years have specifically targeted sort of educational growth, if you will. Maybe I can share those as you know them as well, Larry.
Yeah, please.
The second program that we brought to Detroit was after working with the Detroit Public Schools Community District and our superintendent here. And we just kept asking the question, what could we do to really help lift the long-term vision of our school system and the vision that's being laid out by our council and our parents and teachers and whatnot. And so we found the new teacher center. And what they do is we're integrating this evidence-based program to increase teacher retention and performance for student learning improvement in the district. And so our vision is that every new teacher that wants to work in our public schools district here in Detroit will be supported for the first 2 years by an evidence-based trained veteran teacher in their school, in the district, who serves as a coach and mentor. So through this program, as you know, teachers continue to endure very difficult conditions, even before the pandemic, and our newest teachers are especially vulnerable. So this is a district-wide capacity building program that really anchors a larger plan that the district has to lift and support the entire profession. And we know by research that teachers are, of course, the most critical school-based factor for student learning. And if we can best support them through proven methods, as well as do a number of other things that we're putting in place, we really can lift our teachers and therefore our students and their outcomes in school.
We love teachers, and we have a number of programs within our grant process that helps teachers as well. So it's another one that fits perfectly with our strategy.
Of course, our teachers have been quite the superheroes, even more so as of late, and we're just excited that over time we can support them even more than traditionally they might be, and even in some other places that might not have this level of depth of support for teachers to succeed. And so I might add, during the pandemic, we launched our third program here in Detroit called Springboard Collaborative. And, we know that about 15% of Detroit third graders read at or above grade level. And so fortunately, that means they might be at risk to be retained because of Michigan's relatively new third grade reading law, which was still in flux because of the pandemic. But the point here is, as we've spoke to our parents and families that give direct input into our process, into what we should focus on, what programs we should invest in, they really express this need to be centered in their children's learning. And they want to work alongside our educators. They want the tools to succeed, especially in light of the pandemic, to help their kids learn better in their homes. So Springboard Collaborative specializes in working in concert between teachers, students, and parents or caregivers to set reading goals and create incentives at home. And so that we know that for kids to be better readers, their growth needs to happen at home as well as school. And our parents have absolutely loved this program as we've just started this year, where it provides tips, access to grade appropriate books, it tracks progress together, and it keeps them very connected and directly centered in their child's learning.
Wonderful. So thank you for that. And I might follow up with a question now that you have been leading GreenLight Fund Detroit for a number of years. Is there one thing that you're most proud of over the last several years that GreenLight Fund Detroit has achieved?
As I think about that, of course, we're proud of so many of our investments, but it's not just what we're investing in or our programming, but the who that's involved. I think that's something I am really proud of, is that we're making sure Detroiters are leading at every stage. We're very deliberate about inclusion and representation. That means being honest about race, gender, socioeconomic status, the neighborhoods, many other factors. But we're very focused on those things, and we convene so many people, as you know, in our process: residents, community advisory councils, investors, partners, etc. And so I'm most proud of the who. I'm most proud that it's our people that are leading the way, not only in what programs they want, but what topics should we even focus on? What are the true needs? And then being the leaders to run these programs once we have them here. So I'm real proud about that.
Yeah, as you should be. And it all starts with the leader, and that would be you. So congratulations on what you've done. And let's talk a little bit about the future now. So I know you're getting ready for GreenLight Fund Detroit, the second fund. And so what's the time frame, and is there an overall goal of that fund? And lastly, if somebody is listening and they want to get involved, how do they do that? So if you don't mind, those three things. So time frame, is there a goal, and then how can others get involved?
We're really excited to begin planning for our next fund here in Detroit. And so our model is we raise several $1 million and then we spend that down over the next few years, again, by running our community-centered process to figure out where needs and opportunities are in Detroit. So we're spending this year talking to our founding supporters like you and others that have been such great champions to bring us to the city for a first fund. But we also want to invite and include new investors who want to make deliberate, effective philanthropic contributions into our community through GreenLight Fund. So we're spending this year running that process. We hope to raise between $4 and $5 million this year that, again, can be leveraged multiple times over in our investments. So please feel free, if you're interested in this, to reach out to any of our investors or me directly. All my contact information is on our website at greenlightfund.org. And please reach out. We want to continue to have Detroiters lead the way for a better future, and would love to have more folks involved as we build our next fund this year.
Wonderful. Well said. And as I mentioned, the Children's Foundation is proud to be one of those original investors. And I've already started the conversation with our board of trustees regarding the next fund. So look forward to working with you on that. And so that's Rishi Moudgil of GreenLight Fund Detroit. Rishi, thanks for all you're doing, and I look forward to seeing you in person in the very near future. So thanks a lot.
That's right. Thanks for having me. Appreciate you and everyone else working for better futures for our children.
Excellent. And next, as you know, Rishi, we're going to talk to Tiffany Douglas of Bank of America when we continue on Caring for Kids here on the great voice of the Great Lakes. News Talk 760 WJR.
Welcome back to Caring for Kids on WJR. Presented by the Children's Foundation. Once again, here's Larry Burns.
Joining me now is Tiffany Douglas. Tiffany is Market Executive for 7 counties in Southeast Michigan at Bank of America. In this role, Tiffany coordinates much of the market's activities that serve the bank's client and customer base, delivers for the bank's diverse and professional employees, and directs investments in Metro Detroit to advance economic mobility and racial equality. After working in radio production and as an on-air personality, corporate events management, sales, and marketing roles, Tiffany found real passion working for the United Negro College Fund, serving America's Black youth for college access and advancement. This work eventually led her to Bank of America 15 years ago. Tiffany serves as a director for Detroit Future City, the Detroit Children's Fund, Henry Ford Health System Foundation, Delta Service through Detroit Foundation, Inc., a member of the Delta Sigma Theta sorority, Sparky Anderson's Catch Charity for Children, executive sponsor of BAC's Black Professional Group, and a member of Employee Networks for Bank of America. Tiffany is a very proud volunteer leader. Although a native of the Twin Cities of Minneapolis and St. Paul, Minnesota, Tiffany and her husband and their 2 children make Detroit their home. Well, Tiffany, welcome to Caring for Kids. And I thought we'd start by talking about Bank of America in this region of ours. And, you know, we've been in the COVID environment for, 18, 16 months. And so what are some of the overall priorities of Bank of America in the region? And then we can talk about GreenLight Fund. But I thought I'd give you an opportunity to talk about sort of an overall picture of Bank of America in southeastern Michigan.
Well, Larry, thanks, and it's great to be with you today. In this region and really throughout the state, Bank of America is just really doubling down on going to work and being responsive for our clients, our colleagues, and our communities. We are focused in making sure that our products and services are responsive to the market and its need, and that our footprint is responsive to and connected to our communities. We're ensuring that our teammates are well and safe and healthy by providing a vast array of benefits to make sure that they can thrive in this environment. And then around our community investments and work, we're really making investments that drive economic mobility as well as racial equality. And so although we've been doing that for some time, we really put another stake in the ground last June with $1.25 billion commitment to really drive those two objectives. And so that's around diversity and inclusion. It's around investments that drive the kind of results we want to see. It's around innovative responsiveness with other partner organizations. And we're aligning that work really under 4 pillars. So around health, or helping to close health gaps in communities, responding to small business and its ecosystem, helping to tee up affordable housing and how we can bring resources to the market for that, and then around workforce development, because we know that jobs are available here in the region. It's just that we might have a misalignment of how people are trained and well prepared for those opportunities. So much like many of our organizations, we're just doubling down, going to work, bringing our research, our professional financial team, and our products and services to respond to the market need. And you may know Bank of America has been in this market for over 100 years, but under different nameplates. And Charlie Merrill opened the third Merrill Lynch office right here in downtown Detroit over 100 years ago. So it's a community that we've been invested in and been responsive to for many, many years. And as the times have changed, we're just making sure that we can continue to be responsive with our expertise, resources, and reach to help promote economic opportunities while we support our mission, which is to improve financial lives.
So we're talking with Tiffany Douglas. Tiffany is market executive for 7 counties in southeastern Michigan at Bank of America. And your pillars that you just mentioned, I think, fit naturally into what GreenLight Fund Detroit is doing. And I know that Bank of America was a founding investor that brought GreenLight Fund to Detroit, along with the Children's Foundation, my employer. And why was it important to have this program here? And how is it fitting into your overall community networking strategy?
Well, Larry, first let me say thanks for your investment as well in this organization and work. We are proud to stand with you as founding partners and funders for this initiative, because what we think is unique about it is that it's innovative, it's responsive, it's flexible, and it comes with a coalition of the willing to really discover, scout, select, and invest in opportunities that change outcomes for Detroiters. And our National Foundation president was on the board of GreenLight Fund for another community and called and said, hey, is this something Detroit would like to look at? And when we looked at the opportunity to not only dig deep into our communities about what are some of the greatest challenges that we need to address to get at economic mobility and racial equality, GreenLight was one of those organizations that had that flexible model that came with funding, came with processes, and a network of partners that we could tap into to be responsive to Detroit needs. And so when we found the opportunity, we said, why not? Give it a try. And I think our community has responded well to how GreenLight has come to market. We've been able to secure additional investors. We've made 3 pivotal investments to get at how Detroiters can work, how they're supported in school, and how our parents are getting connected to that education model. So I think that GreenLight brings that kind of innovative and responsiveness. And that's what we want to do. We're a research organization, and so we always go to market with research. We come with resources, and we think GreenLight has done all of that, and it's proving to be so here in Detroit.
Excellent. And so you mentioned earlier, Tiffany Douglas, that Bank of America has been in Detroit for well over 100 years under some different brands and names, but it is a big part of Detroit's heritage and legacy. And GreenLight Fund is a national organization. And so how important was it and is it for the GreenLight Fund Detroit to be sort of Detroit-centric? So a national program and soon to be 15 cities, but ours is specific to Detroit. And Is that important to you and Bank of America, that it's really addressing Detroit and the communities that make up our great city?
I think, Larry, not only is it important, but it's critical. Much like many communities around the country, we have our own, challenges. We have our own connections. We have our own priorities. And although they may not be that different from different communities, the way organizations and investment go to market here may look different. So it must have a Detroit focus. It must be connected to the people of Detroit. It must come from Detroiters, for Detroiters, by Detroiters, and with Detroiters. So GreenLight Fund doesn't pretend to come into Detroit or into the market and know all of the needs and then say, hey, we have, this cookie cutter response method, but that it takes the time to discover and scout and select the kind of initiatives that might actually improve conditions for us here in Detroit. What we love about it at Bank of America is we do the same thing. So although we're a global financial institution and we have a headquarters in a different city, but we all have our own local opportunity to decision how and where we go to market. And so we're one of those markets. I'm privileged to sit at a table with our line of business leaders that get together every week to think about, what are the needs of our customers, how are our colleagues being supported, and what does the community need, and being responsive to that. So even though we're a global financial institution, we just don't take cookie cutter approaches to all of our markets. We take a very local approach. And GreenLight allows for that same approach, right? You can take lots of the resources, the reach, the expertise, but you have to bring it local and do it with the community where you're working and want to drive impact. So I think that is not only important, but absolutely critical if GreenLight is going to be impactful here. And I think it has proven that it can do that and is doing that to get the kind of measurement it wants to see against the investments it's making.
And that is so true for what is happening for GreenLight Fund Detroit. And now that we have several years sort of under our belt in the selection process, can you tell our listeners as an investor what that selection process involves and why you think it's working so well?
It's a coalition of the willing. So people who are interested in moving the needle on metrics for Detroiters have really come to be around this table. So you think of philanthropy, corporate, community, education, civic, all these kinds of folks that bring that back, those kinds of backgrounds, those diverse backgrounds and perspectives come to the table to, again, do that discovery process, scout the opportunities, and then make the selection. So it's not just a small handful of people that are saying, yep, that's the one thing we need. That's going to make all the difference. Bring that here. Let's invest in it and put it to work. It is a selection process of a coalition of the willing that want to debate and then escalate an organization on how that one entity could come in here and make a difference. So again, from philanthropy and civic and private and corporate and neighborhood folks, we get to have these discussions. They're lively debates about what do the communities where we live, work, and play want, right? And so it's not just one person making the decision, Larry, which I think is beautiful. And much like the selection process for GreenLight Fund, Bank of America has a process for our neighborhood builders that is exactly the same. We don't sit in, a small conference room with just a handful of us trying to figure out what are the best ways to go to market and what are some of the resources and needs of the community. We go beyond our corporate walls and talk with community leaders to say, how can we be part of the change that more of us are looking for Detroit? I remember one of our selection committee members said that he was exhausted with mediocrity. And that if we expect to see the change that we want to see in our hearts and heads, we have to invest better, smarter, flexible. And that really requires this group of diverse voices from diverse backgrounds to help make some of these decisions for our communities, right? So it's not just, hey, GreenLight Fund came and said, hey, we think this is great because it worked in another community. It's by Detroiters, for Detroiters, with Detroiters in Detroit, which makes the difference, I believe, Larry. And I think it means that, we've really had a spirited debate about what is the need we're trying to meet, what are the opportunities, what are the organizations, again, discover, scout, select, invest, and then measure with this group of individuals who are looking to drive change, because we are that coalition of folks that want to help make our Detroit the Detroit we know that it is at its heart. But we want that opportunity and those opportunities to be available for more Detroiters. It's been a great opportunity. I've gotten to meet a number of folks I didn't know prior to the selection process and GreenLight coming to market. And we're getting to hear the diverse voices about what are the opportunities and what are the challenges, what are the resources available. So I think it's the change maker and the difference maker for this organization.
Yeah, I agree. I've been part of those discussions, and they are, as you mentioned, they're debates. And so decisions are made. Not everybody feels the same way, but I know when a decision is made, we all come together, and then we're in at 110%.
We look to say, right, Larry, you don't have to agree, but you have to concur, right? Can you concur to how this group and this organization might come to bear on the market? And if you can concur, we all come out of it better.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a very healthy process, and you described it very well. So thank you, Tiffany. So Tiffany, thanks for all you're doing in our region with Bank of America, with GreenLight Fund Detroit, and all the other volunteer work that you do, which is so impressive. And most of all, thanks for being on Caring for Kids for our May edition. So thank you very much.
Well, it's my absolute pleasure, Larry. Thank you for doing the work, highlighting the work, and investing in the work. It is a coalition of folks like you who love and lean into our city, and it's going to take a team effort to continue to drive impact and change. So thanks for all that you're doing. We're proud to be partners with you in this work.
Well, it's my pleasure. And as I like to say, onward together. So that was Tiffany Douglas from Bank of America. Next, I'm going to provide an update on some foundation news here on the great voice of the Great Lakes, News Talk 760 WJR. Well, that was a great show. We'll call it our GreenLight Fund show, but it was an important time to talk about the great work that they're doing throughout the country, and more importantly, the work that they're doing in Detroit now and what they hope and are planning to do in the future. And the Children's Foundation is a proud investor in GreenLight Fund Detroit. I want to thank all who joined us on May 1st for the 5th annual Derby for Kids. It was a great day. We had fun. We were safe. And most importantly, we raised money for world-class pediatric cancer research at the Children's Hospital of Michigan, Mott Children's Hospital, and Hurley Hospital in Flint. Thanks to all of those who have supported us the last 5 years, we've achieved our fundraising goal of nearly $600,000, and we're just delighted and proud that we were able to do that. We want to thank our co-chairs, Luann Ewald of the Mott Children's Hospital in Ann Arbor, and Kathy Donovan of Children's Hospital of Michigan in Detroit. It was a great day indeed, and the Children's Foundation continues to be on the move. I want to thank everyone for joining us tonight on Caring for Kids and your continued support. And as I like to say, onward.
Caring for Kids with Larry Burns on WJR has been presented by the Children's Foundation.